All right, remember, there are no wrong answers on this one. Which one does not belong? Literally say any of them. You just have to have a reason. The last one, why? Okay. So he said there's no repeating numbers. This one also has that the 0 power, right? Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so today we're going to revisit the properties of exponents. So on your paper, I would title this Properties of Exponents. Yes, we're going to continue doing the packet. We just haven't gotten them printed yet, but they're coming. Okay, so properties of exponents. We're going to remind ourselves of the exponent rules that we learned in middle school. Okay, so back in the day in middle school, your teacher showed you something like this. It said 2 to the 3rd power times 2 to the 5th power. What would this answer be? Do you remember? Eight. Okay. So how do we know that this is 2 to the 8th power? Well, say it again. 5 plus 3. Okay, so we're going to add on these, right? So if it has the same base, we're going to add the exponents, right? Okay, another way to do this, because like I always struggle with my exponent rules. You think about it this way. There's 3 2's and there's 5 2's. How many 2's do we have in total? Boom. Does that make sense? Okay. On the next one, we have 2 to the 3rd power raised to the 2nd power. So that's the same thing as saying 2 to what power? 9. Why 9? Okay. So we agree with that statement? Okay, let's think about it really quick. If I have 3 2's, okay, and I'm raising it to the 2nd power. When we raise something to the 2nd power, it's the same thing as taking that and multiplying it by itself, right? So let's multiply it by 3 more 2's. How many 2's do we have in total? 6. Okay, so what do we do with these exponents? Not add, multiply them, right? Give you a second to catch up. On this last one, we have 2 to the 6th power divided by 2 to the 2nd power. Okay, so let's think about this. I'll write this up here. If I have 6 2's up top, and I have 2 2's in the bottom, how many can I cancel out? These and these. How many am I left over with? 4. So it should be 2 to the 4th power. So how can we get the 4th power from these exponents? What are we going to do? Subtract. Okay. And that's just a little reminder from like what you learned in middle, right? Okay, so let's see what we remember about the rules of exponents. Find the value of each variable that makes the equation true. Be prepared to share your thinking. So just like what we did on the last one, you're doing that with these 3 problems. Okay, now some of them are kind of similar. That's okay. What would we do on the first one? We're going to add. So what would x be? So 3 plus 4 is 7. Okay, good. So x would equal 7. Okay, so we would add on these. What about on the next one? What would we do? We would multiply. So what's 2 times 3? 6. So x would equal 6. So we multiplied, right? What about on the last one? Subtract. What's 6 minus 2? 4. Okay, again, some of these were similar. Okay. Same thing we just did. Okay. All right, so now here are some new, you've kind of seen these before, but these are probably going to be a little new to you. I'll give you a second to finish. Right. Okay, so one thing I do want to mention on this, though, is that it has to have the same base in order for us to be able to do this. Okay. For instance, if this said 3 to the 4th power, we wouldn't multiply those two things together. Okay, like we wouldn't have that exponent. It has to have the same base. So notice how we have this and this. We have this base and this base. Okay, that way we can actually perform those properties. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at these next ones. Yay, we're dealing with more variables. Go ahead and take a second, write down all 4 of these, okay, because these are going to be important. These are the ones that you're going to probably see most often. Okay, so take a second, write those 4 down, and then we're going to talk about them. Okay, so on this first one, we have 2x raised to the 3rd power. When you have parentheses around something, that means that you're going to take that 3 and raise that 2 to the 3rd power, and you're going to take that x and then raise it to the 3rd power. So it's going to look like this: 2 to the 3rd, x to the 3rd. Now, what's 2 to the 3rd? 2 times 2 times 2. So what does that give us? Doesn't give us 6. Okay, so here it is again. 2 times 2 times 2. That gives us 8x to the 3rd. Okay, a lot of people make that same mistake of 2 times 3. No, it's taking 2 times 2 times 2. Okay. We're going to do the same thing on this next problem. We're going to take that third power, okay, and we're going to raise both of these things to it. We're going to say a to the 3rd power, b to the 3rd power. So if it has parentheses, you're going to take whatever the exponent is and share it to everything inside the parentheses. 8x to the 3rd, yes. Okay, I do want you to be careful though. If it was written like this, that is not the same thing that is written right here. Okay, so if it said 2x to the 3rd, that's different from taking 2x and raising it to the 3rd power. So we notice the difference in how I said that. Okay, so this is 2x to the 3rd. This is taking 2x and raising it to the 3rd power. Okay. Now, 2 to the 0 power. Anything raised to the 0 power is going to give us 1. Anything raised to the 0 power is going to give us 1. So 2 to the 0 power, that's going to give us 1. Sorry, I wrote that anything really aggressively. Always 1. The only instance that it would be -1. I'm not trying to confuse you, but if they have a parentheses and they got a negative chilling out here and they got something in here and they raise it to the 0 power, then this would be -1. But that's only if there are parentheses. Okay. If I had this instead, this would be +1. If you're ever unsure, type it into your calculator. Okay. If it has parentheses, put the parentheses around it. Okay. All right. On this last part, 2 to the -1st power, anything that has a negative exponent, we're going to flip the fraction. Okay. And what I mean by that is this number 2 is actually a fraction. That's 2 over 1, right? Okay. If I'm going to create a fraction from this, I'm going to flip this. Okay, so that's going to be 1/2. Okay, so when we have a negative exponent, that means we're going to flip it. So negative exponent, we flip the fraction. So looking at slide 7, we got this mess of cards, right? Okay. So I'm going to match the expressions by dragging and dropping the cards onto each other. You may have more than 2 equivalent expressions in a group. So I'm going to start off with this first one right here. Okay, this is saying x to the negative second power. We learned that if you have a negative exponent, what are you going to do? Flip it. Okay, so that means I'm going to have 1 over x to the second power. There we see what I did there. I took x to the second and just flipped it. Okay, so these two things should match up right here and right here. Boom. Okay. If I have this x to the 5th divided by x to the 3rd, so that means I'm going to have 5 x's in the top and 3 x's in the bottom. I'm going to cancel, cancel, cancel. How many do I have left over? 2. So I'm going to have an x to the 2nd. So these two are going to match up. Okay. This right here, these 5 x's and 3 x's in the bottom is what I just drew. So those are going to go with this card. Okay. I've got this x to the 3rd divided by x to the 5th. So I'm going to have 3 x's in the top and 5 x's in the bottom. So those are going to match up. How many will cancel on this? Well, it'll be 1 over x to the 2nd, right? So 1 over x to the 2nd matches up with this stuff. So these will all go together. If I can drop them in. Won't let me drop. Boom. There we go. Okay. On the next one, this x to the 3rd times x to the 2nd, we learned that we were going to add those exponents together. Okay, when we add those exponents together, we're going to get x to the 5th. Okay, which is the same image that's right here. And then finally, we're going to have x to the 2nd raised to the 3rd power, which means we're going to multiply those exponents. That means we're going to have x to the 6th. And that's this image right here. Oop, nope, that's not right. These switched. So sorry. Does that make sense? Let me see what I did there. Okay, that is basic. If you walk out today and you're good on those 4, great. You did the right thing. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the level 2 questions because these are a little bit trickier. Remember how, all right, ready? Remember how I said that you have to have the same base in order to combine things? That's going to come up in here. Okay, so for instance, on this one right here, we've got negative exponent. That means that we're going to switch the fraction. So that means I'm going to have a y to the 10th over x to the 6th. When you see negatives, you flip it. Okay, so if it was on the top, you're going to go on the bottom. If it was on the bottom, it was going to go to the top. Okay, so that'll match up with this one. Okay, right here on this one, we've got x to the negative 3rd, y to the 5th raised to the 2nd power. We know that if we have something raised to a power, we're going to multiply those exponents. So this will give me x to the negative 6, y to the 10th. Well, this x to the negative 6 means that it's going to go on the bottom, right? So this will now become y to the 10th over x to the 6th, which is the same thing that we just did a second ago. So these will match up. Okay. Let's do this one right here. Okay. We've got 2x squared y to the 3rd. Okay, so that means that we're going to take each thing and raise it to the 3rd power. Okay, so that's going to give us 8x to the 6th, y to the 9th. There it is. Okay. On this one right here, we've got y to the 4th times x to the 8th times y to the 3rd. Remember, we can only combine like bases. We're going to add those exponents. So we're going to get y to the 7th, x to the 8th, which is right here. Okay. On this one right here, we're only going to combine the top part. Okay. So we're going to add 10 and 6. So that's going to give us y to the 16th over x to the 6th power. And on this last one down here at the bottom, we're going to combine the x exponent. So that's to the 1st power plus 5. So that's going to give us x to the 6th, y to the 9th, and 4 times 2 is going to give us 8. You can keep going, because I'm at 2nd period. All right, see you tomorrow. Come ready to work.